They got into it that Christmas.
What did she tell him?
Oh, she told him, she said, he says, I just hope you have 100 kids. And he said, that's what you need. And she said, yes. She says, and if I have 100 kids, I've got a husband that'll take care of them and see that they have food and a place to live, and will take care of them. And that's something you're not doing. And him and her, they didn't get it all.
And then your grandmother then stayed with your mom and kind of helped out, or you stayed with the grandmother?
We stayed with the grandmother. Our mother worked. Yeah. And didn't go to school very much because we just, we had to walk to school. We had to walk a mile to either school that we went. We could have went to the Saberton School, or we went there part of the time, and we went up on the Mile Ground. And there was a little school up there, and we went there part of the time.
Now, is that the Mile Ground here in Morgantown?
Yeah, right out here. Yeah, where we're at, the school's still there.
Okay.
And Floyd and I can remember going in the snow, and they was clear up to my hips. And
how did you feel because you weren't able to go to school like the other kids did? Did that make you sad?
No, we didn't. It didn't seem to bother us. You say, in the year of the flu, back in 1922, 3 or 4, something like that, when Daryl's mother died. Why, she died of the flu when they had that bad, And as I remember us kids all having the flu, and we just had two grates in the house, and great fire, and one was there was 2 living rooms, and you could have the fire here and then go around, and on the other side in the same chimney, and we keep that fire going.
So you moved around several times when you were little. Is that correct?
I did what?
Moved?
Well, yeah, they moved, they lived down there where I was born. And where was Opal born, Daryl? Where? Weirton, West Virginia. Opal was born in Weirton, West Virginia.
Hancock County? Okay. Okay, then tell me about your school. What was it like? What subjects you had? How many kids were in school?
I was 10 years old, or 11, I was 10 years old, I guess, when we moved up on Wows's Hill, and we went to school up there because the school was close. And Mother and my stepfather got married in about 1920, and we moved up there then in about 21, and schoolroom was full of kids. There was lots of, I know there were several, maybe 30 or 40 kids, I don't know, there was several of us.
Then did you, what subjects did you?
Well, what I liked were arithmetic and history. History, I loved history, and I loved arithmetic, but I was no good in spelling. I was no speller, and I'm not no speller today.
What about reading?
And reading, I was never very good in reading until just in the later years. Then I did a lot of reading. But spelling, I didn't know that was my dad's. But I loved history and arithmetic.
Okay, now to back up a little bit. Then your dad went to California with Ruth, right? Now was Ruth married then?
No.
How old was she?
Well, that was 1930. about 1931, when Dad came back. My grandfather died, my dad's father died, and he inherited some money, and he came back, and he bought Floyd a car, and I had just got married in June, and he come back the next June. And so that was about 1930. And he put $500 down on a house out here in Sunfress. I showed it to you today. And then Daryl, he was working at the factory, and he was only working maybe 2 days or 3 days a week. And he wasn't making hardly anything, but we had enough to live on. But we we couldn't pay any rent very much or anything like that. And
this was during the Depression years.
During the Depression years, when it was real bad.
It was.
And Daddy went to work one morning, and the glass factory was shut down, and so he was clear out of work. Well, then he went on PWA or whatever. Yeah. And so then we couldn't make the payments on the house, and so the real estate people took it back. And we lost that $500, and, $500. And he bought Floyd a car, and he bought Opal jewelry. He got her some nice jewelry, a watch, and beads, and some nice jewelry and stuff. And he gave me money. He gave me $20 bills. I remember him giving me 3 or 4 $20 bills. I bought me some clothes with that.
Now, when your grandfather died, then didn't they find the one that was so tight? Didn't they find quite a bit of money?
Yes, he had quite a bit of money, but I don't know how many $1,000s he had, and I don't know how much Dad got. But he came here, and of course, in those days, you could buy a car for $400 and $500. Well, he bought Floyd a car. And then he bought himself a yellow car. It was a convertible, little yellow car. I don't know what make it was, Ford, I imagine. And so Aunt Ruth, I don't know. She was the youngest of the family, and she was married once or twice, but she was divorced. She had a girl. She had a daughter out of wedlock. And Avis, this little girl's name was Avis. And so then she was going to have another baby. And so she had another little girl. She called her Dorothy. And that was just about the time my dad came back to town, about 1930. So he got in with Ruth. And him and Ruth took off with those 2 kids and went to California in that little yellow car. And they went to California, and Aunt Ruth, Avis is still out there as far as I know, and Dorothy died. She got cancer and died. And Avis still lives out there, and they lived in Pittsburgh. It was called Pittsburgh, California, the last I heard of them.
Do you know who Avis married?
Don't know who Avis married or how many children she had or anything.
Okay, now your dad, he was pretty much I remember a picture of him with his brothers, and didn't they wear the fancy hats? Thought they were pretty much ladies' men, right?
Yeah, that's right. He was.
So then he bought that yellow car, which
yeah,
kind of goes along with that.
Yeah.
Then when then did your mom finally divorce him? Was it after Ruth went to California?
Oh, no. That was 1930, and Mother was married to my stepdad in 1920.
Okay, so
they must have divorced about the time that Opal was born, because that was 1914, because she was the last baby. And I imagine that was about when they was divorced, 1914 or 15, I would say.
Your mom was probably living where Aunt Opal was born when they divorced, right?
Yeah.
And then tell us about she met Murray Fox. Where did you?
She met him. They both worked at the tin mill, and she met him up there. And he was married once before, but his wife only lived 9 months, and she had TB, and she died. And I forget what her name was. Her first name was Jane. I forget what her last name was. But her home was up on Wowzers Hill, close to where his home was. And so him and Mother, they went to West Newton to my Aunt Lily's, and they got married down there about 19 and 20 on Christmas Day. And they left. We stayed with Grandma, and Aunt Opal lived there at home. She lived there close. She was married, but she lived there close to Grandma. And Aunt Ethel lived there close, so we stayed there at the house. Of course, we stayed by ourselves most of the time, anytime, because Mother worked all the time, and Grandma was sick, and she was in bed most of the time, and so we took care of ourselves.
And what was the matter with Grandma, your grandmother?
I don't know. I don't know what. Heart trouble killed Grandma. She had heart trouble. And all of my aunts died of heart trouble. And my mother died of heart trouble. It runs in the family.
Now, your Murray Fox was a wonderful man, wasn't he?
Yes, he was a good man. He worked in the tin mill. And he worked in the glass factory some. And
he'd been in the service too.
Yeah, he was in the First World War.
And was in the Army?
Yes, he was in the Army. He was in the...
Now this was before Grandma married him, that he was in the Army?
Yeah. Yeah, because, see, they was married about 1920.
And then where did he go into the service at? Here in Morgantown?
Here in Morgantown, yeah.
And where was he stationed?
I don't know where he was stationed. He was stationed up around Fairmont for a while. They had a camp up there. And he was up there for a while because I know on weekends they would, there was several of the boys. There was, his buddies. There was about 3 or 4 of them. And they would come back to Morgantown over the weekend, you know, maybe come down on a Sunday. I don't know how they come on the train, probably. And they'd come down